I am Isabella Mendez, born on March 17, 1989, in Oaxaca, Mexico. And I was once an active servant of darkness assigned to monitor and weaken believers who carried the light of God. I am not sharing something I heard. I am exposing what I personally did, what I enforced, and what I now deeply regret with every breath in my body. We were sent against Christians who prayed, not those who didn't, because we feared what they carried but knew how to silence it. Before you go any further, like this video comment right now and share this with someone you love, because what you are about to hear was never meant to reach you. Watch this until the very end, because what I am about to reveal is the hidden weapon inside Psalm 91 that we feared more than any prayer spoken out loud. This is not information, this is exposure, and tonight something buried is about to be uncovered. The first thing you must understand is that we were never afraid of people who read scripture. We were afraid of those who entered it. There is a difference, a dangerous difference. And Psalm 91 was not just a chapter to us, it was a territory, a spiritual location, a dwelling. And the moment a believer truly stepped into it, we lost access completely. You see, when I was in the occult, we were trained to monitor believers. We didn't waste time on unbelievers. They were already exposed. Our assignments were focused, calculated, and targeted. We studied patterns, prayer habits, weaknesses, moments of emotional breakdown, moments of doubt, and especially moments when believers spoke without understanding. Because there was something we knew that most churches never taught clearly. Words without positioning are noise, but positioning with revelation is authority. Psalm 91 begins with something most people ignore. He who dwells in the secret place, not visits, not reads, not quotes occasionally, dwells. That word was everything to us, because dwelling meant permanence, consistency, submission, alignment. And when someone truly dwelt, we couldn't reach them the same way anymore. I remember one assignment clearly. We were sent to weaken a man who prayed every night. He quoted Psalm 91 daily, every single day. At first we laughed, because we had seen this before. People repeating words, thinking it was enough. And for weeks nothing changed. We still accessed his life. We still influenced his environment. We still planted fear in his thoughts. Why? Because he was speaking but not dwelling. He knew the words, but not the position. But then, something we did not expect, he stopped rushing his prayers. He stopped repeating empty words. And suddenly he became still, consistent, aligned, and that's when it happened. The access point closed, not gradually, instantly. We tried to enter through fear, blocked. We tried through confusion, blocked. We tried through dreams, blocked. It was like hitting a wall we could not see, but could not pass. And I remember the command we received that night: withdraw. That word was never used lightly. It meant failure. It meant defeat. It meant the target had entered a place we could not penetrate. And that place was the secret place described in Psalm 91. You need to understand this clearly. The secret place is not a physical location. It is a spiritual state of alignment. It is where your thoughts, your words, your focus, and your faith all submit under divine authority. Most believers speak Psalm 91, but remain outside of it. And that's why attacks still reach them. Because quoting is not dwelling, repeating is not abiding, and noise is not authority. This is what we depended on. We needed believers to stay shallow, to stay distracted, to stay inconsistent. Because inconsistency breaks dwelling. And once dwelling is broken, access is restored. That was our strategy: distraction, fatigue, delay, anything to pull you out of alignment, because even a moment outside that place, opening. But when someone remained, when they stayed rooted, when they became spiritually aware, we could not manipulate their emotions anymore. We could not plant fear the same way. We could not influence their decisions. They became untouchable in ways that terrified us, not because they were loud, but because they were aligned. And this is the secret the church rarely explains deeply. Psalm 91 is not a protection prayer. It is a protection position. And once you understand this, everything changes. Because now it's no longer about how many times you say it. It's about where you are spiritually when you say it. Are you distracted? Are you fearful? Are you doubting? Or are you fully aligned, fully submitted, fully dwelling? Because only one of those positions carries authority. And we knew it. That's why we never feared loud Christians. We feared aligned ones. We feared those who understood the secret place. Because once you truly enter it, you don't just speak Psalm 91, you become untouchable under it. And when that happens, every assignment against you begins to collapse one by one. The second thing you must understand is that Psalm 91 was never just about protection, it was about legal authority in the Spirit. And this is where most believers were completely unaware and where we gained our greatest advantage. Because in the realm of the Spirit, nothing happens randomly. Everything responds to permission or authority. There is no middle ground. You are either aligned under divine covering or you are exposed to spiritual gaps. And we were trained to look for those gaps relentlessly. We studied believers who prayed Psalm 91 daily, but still lived in fear, still spoke doubt, still entertained anxiety. And that contradiction was our entry point. Because what you say in faith, but cancel in fear, creates a legal conflict. And conflict weakens authority. This is what the church rarely tells you. You cannot declare protection, meditate on destruction. You cannot say God is my refuge and then internally believe you're vulnerable, because in the spirit, your inner agreement speaks louder than your outer words. I remember a woman we were assigned to. She was faithful, disciplined. She prayed Psalm 91 every morning without fail. But every night, she feared something would happen to her children. She imagined accidents. She imagined loss. She imagined tragedy. And those thoughts were not random. We planted them carefully, strategically, because we knew something she didn't. If we could get her to emotionally agree with fear, even for a moment, we could bypass the protection she was declaring. And it worked, not because Psalm 91 failed, but because her alignment was divided. This is the hidden truth. Spiritual authority requires agreement, complete agreement, not partial, not occasional, not emotional, consistent, unshaken. And when that agreement is broken, even slightly, it creates a legal opening. We didn't need to overpower believers. We just needed them to contradict themselves, because contradiction cancels authority. That was one of our strongest weapons. And many believers were completely unaware. They would pray powerfully, then speak negatively minutes later. They would declare protection, then confess fear in conversations. They would stand in faith, then collapse in doubt when pressure came. And every time that happened, we advanced, not because we were stronger, but because their authority was weakened. You must understand this deeply. Psalm 91 is activated through alignment of thought, word, and belief. Not just repetition, alignment. That is the secret weapon we feared. Because when a believer's mind and mouth and spirit all agreed at once, it created a barrier we could not penetrate. I saw it happen more than once. There were moments when a believer shifted from fear to absolute certainty, and the atmosphere changed instantly. We could feel it. It was like being pushed back by an invisible force, not emotional, not loud, but unmovable. That is authority. And when that authority is established, no argument from darkness can override it. But here is what we did to stop that from happening. We introduced confusion. We made believers question themselves. We made them overthink. We made them doubt their own prayers, because doubt fractures alignment. And once alignment is fractured, authority begins to leak. This is why some of you feel like your prayers are not working. It's not because God is not listening. It's because your agreement is unstable. One moment you believe, the next moment you question. One moment you stand, the next moment you fear. And that instability is exactly what we exploited. But the moment you stabilize, everything shifts. The moment your mind locks into truth and refuses to move, the moment your words reflect unwavering belief and your spirit aligns completely, you become legally untouchable, not emotionally. Because now there is no contradiction, no opening, no gap. And without a gap, we have no access. That is the secret. That is what was hidden, not from you intentionally, but lost through lack of understanding. Psalm 91 is not just something you say, it is something you become aligned with. And once that alignment is complete, protection is no longer something you ask for. It becomes something that surrounds you automatically. And that is what we fear the most. The third thing you must understand is that Psalm 91 was not only defensive, it was offensive. And this is the part that terrified us the most. Because once a believer truly aligned, they didn't just block attacks, they reversed them. Most believers think protection means hiding, staying safe, avoiding danger. But that is not what we saw. What we saw was authority that pushed back, authority that disrupted assignments, authority that exposed operations we tried to keep hidden. And that only happened when someone reached a deeper level of understanding. Because Psalm 91 contains something most people read but never activate. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder. That was not symbolic to us. That was a direct threat because it meant dominion. It meant you were no longer just under protection. You were now standing in authority over what was sent against you. I remember the first time I witnessed this. We were assigned to influence a man's business, to bring confusion, loss, delay, and at first it worked, slowly, quietly. Things began to collapse. Opportunities closed, partnerships broke, money slowed down. Everything we initiated was subtle but effective because he was unaware. But then something shifted. He didn't just pray anymore. He began to declare with authority, not begging, not hoping, but commanding. And we noticed it immediately because his words carried something different. They carried certainty. And that certainty triggered something we could not ignore. He began to speak directly against the attacks. He addressed what was happening. He rejected it. He stood against it. And that was dangerous because now he was no longer passive. He was engaged. And when a believer becomes engaged, they stop being a target and start becoming a threat. The atmosphere around him began to change. Not emotionally, but spiritually, what we had set in motion started reversing. Confusion cleared. Decisions became sharp, opportunities reopened, and we lost control, not gradually, suddenly. I remember the exact moment we received the instruction, CC operation. That command meant one thing: the assignment had been overpowered. And it wasn't because we were forced out violently, it was because we were legally removed. There was no longer any authority supporting our presence. That is what happens when Psalm 91 is activated correctly. It doesn't just protect you, it removes what should not be there. But this is what most believers never realize. Authority must be exercised, not just understood. You can know scripture and still remain passive. You can quote promises and still allow attacks to continue. Because knowledge without action produces no resistance. And we depended on that. We needed believers to stay passive, to endure instead of confront, to accept instead of reject. Because passivity gave us time to build pressure, time to create damage, time to establish influence. But when someone stood up, when someone spoke with authority, when someone refused to tolerate what was not aligned with God, everything changed. Because now we were no longer dealing with a passive believer. We were dealing with someone who understood dominion. And dominion cannot be negotiated with. It cannot be manipulated. It cannot be delayed. It forces a response immediately. This is why some of you have been under pressure for so long. You have been praying, but not confronting. You have been believing, but not exercising authority. You have been hoping, but not standing. And hope without authority does not stop attacks. But the moment you shift, the moment you declare with conviction, the moment you stand without hesitation, the entire atmosphere responds, not emotionally, legally. Because now you are no longer asking for protection, you are enforcing it. And when protection is enforced, everything misaligned must leave. That is what we feared. Not loud prayers, not long prayers, but authoritative declarations rooted in alignment. Because those declarations carried weight, they carried power, they carried finality. And once they were released, we had no argument left, no access point, no legal ground, only one option: withdrawal. This is the hidden dimension of Psalm 91, not just covering, but dominion in action. And once you begin to walk in that, you will not only see protection, you will see reversal, you will see restoration, you will see things shift in ways that cannot be explained naturally. Because what was sent against you will no longer stand. The fourth thing you must understand is that Psalm 91 was never fully activated by words alone, it was activated by relationship. This is the part many never reach, and this is why many never see the full power of what they are declaring. Because relationship creates identity, and identity determines authority. When I was in the occult, we could always tell the difference immediately between someone who was just repeating scripture and someone who knew God intimately. There was a weight to them, a presence, a certainty that could not be shaken, not because they were perfect, but because they were connected, deeply connected. Psalm 91 says something most people read but don't truly understand. Because he has set his love upon me, that line was critical. Because it revealed something deeper than protection. It revealed connection, love, commitment, intimacy. And in the spirit, intimacy cannot be faked. It cannot be forced. It cannot be performed. It is either real or it is absent. And we knew it. We could sense it. A believer without relationship was easier to influence, even if they prayed, even if they fasted, even if they spoke scripture. Because without relationship, there was no depth, no rooted identity, no unshakable foundation. But when someone truly knew God, everything changed. Their confidence was different. Their response to pressure was different. Their reactions were different. They did not panic easily. They did not collapse under fear. They did not break under pressure. Because their trust was not based on circumstances, it was based on relationship. I remember one assignment that failed before it even started. We were sent to bring fear into a woman's life. Simple assignment, direct. We had done it many times before. But the moment we approached, something was different. There was no opening, no emotional instability, no hidden fear to amplify. Nothing. Just peace, unshakable peace. And that peace was not passive, it was powerful. Because it came from deep trust. She didn't just know Psalm 91, she knew the one who spoke it. And that changed everything. Because relationship produces confidence, and confidence stabilizes authority. We could not plant fear in her thoughts. We could not create doubt. We could not introduce confusion. Every attempt failed instantly. It was like trying to write on a surface that rejected everything. And I remember the conclusion we reached: she is covered fully. That meant the assignment could not proceed. Not because of what she said, but because of who she was connected to. This is what many believers overlook. They focus on the words, but ignore the relationship behind the words. They focus on declarations, but neglect intimacy. And without intimacy, declarations lose depth. Authority becomes unstable and protection becomes inconsistent. But when relationship is strong, everything becomes natural. You don't have to force faith. You don't have to struggle to believe. You don't have to fight to stay aligned. Because your connection sustains you automatically. This is why Psalm 91 ends with something powerful. I will be with him in trouble, not distant, not watching from afar. With him, present, engaged. And that presence is what makes the difference, because when God is truly with you, no force can stand against you, not temporarily, not conditionally, completely. But this level is not reached casually. It requires commitment, consistency, surrender, time spent in His presence, not just asking, but listening, not just speaking, but connecting. And this is what we try to prevent at all costs. We distracted believers. We filled their lives with noise. We kept them busy. Because busyness kills intimacy. And without intimacy, they remain vulnerable. But the moment you slow down, the moment you focus, the moment you build that relationship intentionally, everything shifts. Your prayers change. Your words carry weight. Your mind stabilizes. Your authority becomes consistent. And Psalm 91 stops being something you visit and becomes something you live in. That is the final level. That is the hidden dimension. Not just dwelling, not just alignment, not just authority, but relationship. Because relationship sustains everything else. And once that is established, you are no longer trying to be protected. You are already covered, completely, fully, permanently. And that is what we could never break. You have heard the truth, and now you are no longer unaware. What was hidden has been exposed, and what was silent has been broken. You are not weak. You are not unprotected. You are positioned for authority if you choose to stand. Comment now, confirm what has been revealed to you, and share this with someone who must not remain in ignorance. You stayed until the end for a reason, because this message was not random, it was necessary. Now stand, align, and take back what was yours without fear and without hesitation. This ends here, and from this moment forward, you walk in authority that cannot be challenged.